If you're looking to move to Portland, Oregon, you've come to the right channel. My name is Tasha Kane, and I've lived in Portland for over 20 years. I've raised my family here and lived in almost every quadrant in this city, and I absolutely love it. I know the ins and outs of Portland so well, what makes it great and also what makes it a little bit challenging. But overall, it's such a great community, such a great town. It's got great schools, phenomenal restaurants, and if you love the outdoors, we are close to everything. I can't wait to share it for you. And today we're going to talk about some of my favorite neighborhoods, Slabtown and the Pearl District. So stay tuned as we talk about what makes it great and also what makes it maybe a little bit challenging. Can't wait to share it with you. Okay, we're going to talk about Slabtown and the Pearl District. These are in Northwest Portland, and they're really easy to get to from the 405. So if you're coming from the PDX International Airport, you can hop down I-84, drop off on I-405, and right into these neighborhoods. They're close to the Willamette River, which really divides the east and west side of Portland. And what's great is that they're within walking distance of everything. You can get downtown in about 15-20 minutes stroll, over to Northwest Portland in about 10 minutes, and then they're connected as well right by the 405 bridge. So let me unpack why these two are amazing. First of all, Slabtown is actually a really newer development. Between Northwest Portland and also Pearl District, there wasn't really much there. It was very industrial, and it really has been in the last decade where we're really seeing the transformation take place. There's a real popularity with a lot of mid-rise condominiums that are being built, and we see really new development going up constantly there. But the gravitation of really some phenomenal restaurants like G-Love and Breakside are really drawing a real fun crowd there. As well as anytime you have a new seasons anchored in a neighborhood, it's going to be great. So you really get this really young, hip vibe. There's also a great wine bar like Muse, which we love to go to. They have an amazing selection of some European wines, and also St. Jack's, which is a beautiful French cuisine that feels very local to Paris. So Slabtown, how it became about was in, I'd say the late 1800s, turn of the century. It was actually a timber industry, and that's really where you had a lot of the timber industry centralized and lumber mills. And it used to be a lake and actually fed into the Willamette River. So they would feed the logs that way to the river. A little town started popping up and was just made out of wood slabs, and that's where the mill workers would work. And so it's called Slabtown. So they eventually began to fill in those lakes and those ponds, and it's really an infill now. And so that's where it got its name from. So it was a nod to that early community, Slabtown. Now, juxtaposed right next to it is Pearl District. Pearl District is absolutely one of my favorite, and I have quite an affinity for it because my first job out of college was down in that area, and I can tell you there was nothing down there. There are this old railroad tracks, there was like these old warehouse buildings. We had a Myron Frank department store that was originally there, but completely emptied out. So it gave really this artsy industrial vibe in the early 90s. And that was the draw of it. A lot of art galleries began to open up down there. A lot of those lofts were converted into condominiums, which became really high-end condominiums. And it just became a really great walking district. So we saw businesses like Keen get established there. We have a Gold's Gym there. So it is, I would say, where we see a lot of Portland executives, like young couples, young executives, downsizers tend to gravitate towards Pearl District. And it is a real draw also for some amazing restaurants like Andina and Mediterranean Exploration. There's also a Whole Foods down there, which really creates a really nice higher end grocery store. And then one of the most iconic bookstores in all of the world, I would say, definitely in the US, is the home to Powell's Bookstore, the largest bookstore in the US. So that gives you a quick snapshot of what makes these two neighborhoods really great. I'm going to unpack that a little bit more. So let's talk about the pros of living in the Pearl District. Bar none, the walkability in the Pearl District is one of the best in all of Portland. The reason being is that actually a lot of the streets are blocked off really cars can't go through it. So you have these big, wide open streets where a lot of restaurants have put outdoor seating. And so you just don't have the interference of traffic, which gives this neighborhood a walkability score of 98. So a lot of people love walking or living down here because they're able to walk to their favorite coffee shop, go out to breakfast, go to a wine bar, go to an awesome restaurant, and also really be able to walk down to Waterfront, where you can walk along the river or walk to one of the parks to be able to just enjoy the afternoon in an outdoor space like Jameson Park. So the walkability is a tremendous feature of Pearl District, and it's definitely one of the things I enjoy most. The second thing, like I talked about, is the access to parks. It has some of the biggest and nice parks out of a lot of neighborhoods, especially urban neighborhoods. So Jameson Park was created in the 1990s, and that's really when the Pearl District really started to get this development boom. Before, like I said, it was a lot of industrial buildings that weren't converted yet. So really just old railroad tracks and sporadic maybe art galleries. So started taking out in the 1990s. And I remember clearly, because I was living here at the time, a picture of Jameson Park actually being featured in our local newspaper, the Oregonian. And I was like, oh my God, how is this like really kind of unsexy part of town going to have this beautiful like community park? And they built it in the 1990s, and it's been such a highlight of this neighborhood because it is a tiered water feature, and for the families, it's absolutely. We even go down there quite frequently especially when my kids were younger. It's such a fun water feature for kids to splash around in and go into the waterfalls, kick around in terms of the ponds. And it just is really nice in terms of getting that reprieve from the heat in the summer months. And it just really lightens up the area. Tanner Springs is also a really beautiful little park. It's a lot smaller, but they've really created a nice vibe with it. It has some small trails, some benches, some water features like some ponds, and some nice outdoor elements as well. So while it's not as big, it definitely is a nice little block that's close to some of the bigger condominiums like the Cosmopolitan. And one also too ability is to get down to the waterfront. So waterfront, you can definitely get there maybe in 20-30 minutes and be next to the Willamette River, be able to take a stroll along the river and enjoy the city that way. So definitely the third pro of living in the Pearl District is the actual spaces. There are some of the coolest condominiums and mid-rises that are in all of Portland here. Definitely more modern in some ways. So you have something like the Cosmopolitan or Encore as some of the newer spaces to live in. But then you also have some of these lofts that were converted, and these are the industrial lofts, right? They're big open floor plans, big windows that give you some really great views. So it depends what your vibe is. You like something newer with an elevator and just panoramic views, or do you want more of a townhouse feel or a lofty feel? There is so much diversity of different options in the Pearl District, and you see so many people want that kind of urban lifestyle move to the Pearl District. And you really can get a condo that's super affordable from the $400,000 all the way up to $2 million. But it really kind of depends what your price point range is. But really, that sweet spot is going to be between $400,000 to $600,000. It definitely has been saturated in a lot of ways, but that gives the power to the buyer in terms of where you can choose to live and gives you some great options. So another pro of mine of living in the Pearl District is absolutely the lifestyle. You cannot beat the walkability and going into some of the best restaurants. On a summer night, nothing's better than sitting outside and on the deck of Mediterranean Exploration and enjoying some really good Mediterranean food, going to a Peruvian restaurant like Andina, which is really in the heart of the Pearl District, a Pizza Italia, which is right by Jameson Park. So this ability to be able to walk outside of your apartment or condo and access some of the best restaurants, coffee shops is really why people love living down here. Also too, the shopping's great. This is where we have a lot of the flagship stores in Portland, like Madewell, Anthropology, which are located by the biggest bookstore in the US, Powell's Book. Now this bookstore is more than a bookstore. It's got a cafe, and it's just got some great cultural relevance to Portland. It's so iconic, and if you are visiting Portland, absolutely Powell's Bookstore will be a stop on your list. And it's so great to be able to walk in the Pearl District and pop into this bookstore and actually spend hours, because there's four or five floors of just some of every book that you can imagine. So a lifestyle here is really special, and you just, again, it brings some of the best specialty stores here, the biggest brands, and the best restaurants, all within a walking distance from your house. So let's talk about some of the reasons you might not want to move to the Pearl District. You are paying for the lifestyle, the walkability, and it's some of the best in Portland. So therefore, the prices on dwellings are going to be a lot higher. You can definitely get upwards to $1 million, $2 million on some of these condo prices. And it's what you pay for, is that access to great restaurants, to Powell's Bookstore, to some of the best shopping. So just be prepared that you're not going to find the most affordable housing. Even though home prices and condo prices have dropped considerably in the Pearl District, it is still one of the highest places to live in an urban community. So the second reason really shouldn't come as a surprise why you might not want to move to the Pearl District, and that's just lack of parking. Parking is really going to be more premium. It's expensive. If you're part of a condominium, it is going to be only maybe 1 or 2 spots and come at a cost. So that's something I think any urban neighborhood is going to be challenged with, is really access to quality parking. How about the third reason? The third reason I would say is you are part of a newer urban neighborhood. Even though it came about in the 1990s, it does feel a little bit more polished than more of a Northeast neighborhood, which is from the turn of the century. It feels a little bit more, I would say, lived in, whereas the Pearl District has more commercial zones, higher end housing, and really just some of the best restaurants. So you might not always get that local feel if that is what you're looking for. Personally, I think the pros outweigh any cons of the Pearl District. I love urban neighborhoods, and what I love about the Pearl District is, even though it feels like an urban neighborhood and has that New York vibe, Seattle vibe, San Francisco vibe, you are still so close to nature, and to be able to get onto an easy freeway network system. Like I mentioned, you can quickly get into downtown Portland, or you can walk over and get access to Forest Park, that has some of the largest network of trails in a city center in all of the US. So the proximity of this neighborhood to so much is what makes it really attractive. And of course, just the lifestyle, the great restaurants, the coffee shops, and really great accommodations. It has some of the most beautiful condominiums and townhouses in all of Portland. And that vibe for me is what is really attractive. And personally, I know that when I downsize someday, that is going to be a neighborhood I would love to get into, because the idea of being able to walk to a restaurant, a wine bar, or grab a coffee in the morning is super attractive. Or get out of town within a minute because I have the freeway right there. Again, it is really a strong feature. So let's move on to talking about Slabtown, the neighboring neighborhood, and what makes it different to Pearl District. So let's talk about Slabtown. Now, Slabtown might not be on your radar. It actually is a newer development, and I would say more of the locals know about it and call it Slabtown. It's been around maybe 10, 15 years, but it's tucked in between the Pearl District, which we just talked about, and Northwest Portland. Northwest Portland is closer to Forest Park, which is the largest park within urban boundaries and has a huge network of trails. So Northwest Portland has more of the more iconic Craftsman, Victorian style homes, and the Pearl District has more of those high and mid-rise condominiums and really kind of a big restaurant scene. Whereas Slabtown just feels like more of a neighborhood community. It's a lot smaller, but also newer development. And so let's talk about some of the pros. Definitely the restaurant scene, while it's not as big as some of the other neighborhoods, has some of the best in Portland. One of my favorite is G Love. It's an American cuisine, very vegetable forward, and has a great drink menu, great wines, and has some great outdoor seating. It's just really got a cool vibe. If you're looking for some really outstanding French cuisine, you want to hit St. Jack's up. It's still it feels very casual and accessible. It definitely has more of an elevated experience. So great oysters, great drinks, some really great French overall delicacies. In addition to some more higher end restaurants, you also have some great breweries. Breakside Brewery is really in the hub of Slabtown. It's a great gathering spot to catch a beer, and especially when it's a warm summer day. It's so fun to stand outside and grab a drink and hang out at the benches there. And then a Lucky Lab, which actually allows you to bring your dogs to the brewery. It's super fun and just get very relaxed atmosphere. What makes this neighborhood so great is just it has this really trendy urban chic vibe. And again, it doesn't feel very big, it just feels very homey and accessible. And that brings me to my second point, why Slabtown is just a really desirable neighborhood. It just doesn't feel overwhelming. You really can walk around it in about 10-15 minutes. And again, you can get to Northwest Portland where you have a whole different scene, or the Pearl District, which is definitely more industrial and larger, where this just feels like a little local neighborhood and that you can just bop around in and feel really just like a tight community. It's still also a really growing community, so I think it's a great neighborhood to get a foothold in as a first-time home buyer, or if you're looking for a second home, or if you're just downsizing. The prices are so much more affordable than if you were to live in the Pearl District, which means like time to get in is now before it really starts growing and developing even further. To get a foothold in this neighborhood would be a really wise investment decision. So another pro of buying or living in Slabtown is that everything's newer. So you're just going to have bigger units. A lot of them have fitness facilities. A lot of them have easier parking. They're just better floor plans and also deferred maintenance. You don't have to reckon with a sewer, or you don't have to really worry about a roof. So it definitely attracts some, I would say, a lot of professionals and creative types, just because the space is just so much more livable. And you really can't say that about a lot of urban neighborhoods that are outside of Portland and even within Portland. So some of the downsides of living in Slabtown is that there really isn't a lot of options, and you can get on wait lists. So it just doesn't have the same selection as you would see in the Pearl District. Two, there is a lot of ongoing construction. It is definitely a neighborhood that is work in progress. You'll have cranes and probably dump trucks running up and down, which can be a little bit frustrating. And overall, it's just smaller. It just has a smaller feel, so it's not like you're walking blocks and just can get lost. It is pretty quaint and small and very neighborhoody feel. But again, it's newer, it's more polished, it's trendy, and it just, everything's at your doorstep essentially. You can go to New Seasons, you can go to Good Coffee, you can go to G-Love, and literally that's all within a block. Just depends on if that small knit community is your vibe or not. So overall, these two neighborhoods are right next to each other, but have definitely different vibes. The Pearl District was started in the 90s, so it's a little bit more established and attracts probably more of a luxury condo buyer, upscale professionals, executives, downsizers, and people really actually are buying property there. Whereas Slabtown might be a little bit more of a younger professional community and more renters, first-time home buyers. So it's a little bit smaller, and I would say more of this creative young professional type. So again, not saying that both of those type of demographics aren't living in the other areas. It's just that's really the draw and appeal of those two neighborhoods. Personally, they are some of my favorite neighborhoods in all of Portland. I worked in Pearl District when I first got out of college, and then it was very industrial, and to see it really transform over all these decades has really just been a great experience. And I love going down there with my husband and just walking on the streets that are closed, like I mentioned earlier, grabbing a glass of wine at one of our favorite wine bars. But I also love the really small feel of Slabtown. Not a lot of people know about it. It's definitely not touristy. It doesn't have the Pals Book, which is a huge draw of Pearl District, so you don't get all these tourists and the congestion that you might have in the Pearl District. Slabtown is definitely more of a smaller community, so it's more of a pass-through neighborhood, but has some great restaurants, which we like to frequent. So again, both are really desirable places to live close by, but totally different vibes. I hope you've enjoyed this recap of pros and cons of Slabtown and the Pearl District. If you want more of this tidbits and insights to Portland, please subscribe below. If you're thinking about moving to Portland, please hit me up. I would love to help you. I've lived here for 20 years and absolutely will find you the best spot that fits your lifestyle and your needs. I look forward to connecting.